I am Doug Stockman, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about the software we have been developing. Over the past few years, we have built independent applications, but recently we have been tying them all into a quasi-electronic health record. I like to consider many of these ideas intellectual property that are mine. Um, I'm going to walk you through a few of examples of what some of the software does. This is by no means exhaustive and just touches on a little bit of what we have created. Many of my patients do not speak English, so much of my interventions have been focused on improving language communication with patients using other languages. Um, Let me share my screen and then get started here. Okay, this is what the EHR looks like. I just have two test patients right now. What I will often do before a session is text appointment reminders to my patients. So let me run that app, which is called a group text program. It imports my patient list into who I'm going to send text to. Um, on the left-hand side are canned messages that you can create. For example, I was having a Zumba class for Muslim females, so I created a text that I could send to patients very easily. This site also allows you to predefine the text into other languages. As an example, if I wanted to send this text message in Arabic, it would look like that. And the message I'm going to send is over here. Then all I really have to do is, if the patient is consented and I have cell information, I just have to click on send, and the message gets sent via text. I can send the messages using just English, or I can use the patient's language. In this case, it would have gone out in Chinese and Spanish to Edward and Edwina. I can also send messages out at different times, such as, let's say I set this up to send out for my afternoon patients, but I did not want to send it out until 10 a.m. and I wanted to send one text every 15 minutes so I didn't notify patients too early and they might forget. I could set that up very easily and then just leave it to run later. I have multiple recipient lists. This is great. Let's say, for example, I have a list of patients who are on warfarin, and I routinely contact them to get their INRs. One of these recipient lists could just be left as my INR patients. And then it makes it very easy to contact all my patients on warfarin with just one click of the button. Another thing I can do is patients can reply to me, and it comes into this location. So then we can talk back and forth. If I don't want to do a canned message, I can also write a message to a patient with free text. So we can go back and forth. Another thing we can do is we can even have a conversation with the patient if they are online right at that time and we have some things we want to go back and forth about. What I've said right now is just scratching the surface for this program, but it gives you an idea of trying to meet patients a little bit closer to where they live, which is in their own language and using cell service. Many of my patients cannot access the patient portal for various reasons, so this makes it easier to get small messages to them. Now, when a patient arrives, we have created some software to make patient check-in much easier. This is a patient check-in screen, and the patient can choose what language they want to view the check-in screen. As this example is in simplified Chinese, this is in Dari, which is an Afghan language, or in English. I'll just use English for this example, but when the patient chooses the language on the right-hand side, the other screens that come up are going to be in their language. Let's just use Edward Test as an example. He just types in his name and date of birth, and then it will check him in with the date and time of arrival. The staff can set up what screens occur next, if any. So it's possible to just stop right here and not offer the patient any other screens. I will just go through a few examples of other possible screens that could be used. Let us say Edward has diabetes and he wants to talk about that. He's got high blood pressure. And he's having trouble going to the bathroom. At this point, I am not translating this text on the fly, but I suspect in the future I will use an on-screen keyboard for patients to write in their own language. But right now, I don't have that in here. Let us say the patient we know he has diabetes and high cholesterol. Let's say he's got some depression, and we know he has high blood pressure, so he can choose all these things to help us along. And he's unsure if he wants a medicine refill. He is still smoking, and he is safe at home. So we can finish up here. What I have done for the next screen is you can choose to, again, stop here, or you can offer specific forms. In this case, I have let the patient choose what forms they would like to fill out next, if any. We'll do a simple PHQ-9 just to see how this comes into the program. Edward has diabetes, so he might want to answer some of these things. You can see those later. Another thing for high functioning patients is the patient could even enter their vital signs in. We'll just go through a simple example. Okay, let's say this is all done and Edward has now completed online forms. Exit this. Going back to the EHR, I have Edward selected. So I can now go into his chart and I can view these check-in answers. Because he said he has diabetes and the reason for visit, the program is smart enough to realize that he completed a diabetes questionnaire and pulled it into the subjective part that is labeled as diabetes. You can see his answers right here. He didn't answer anything about high blood pressure, so it was just left as he put it, and same for the bathroom. But his review of systems in here with positives marked in red, so you can find them easy. Because he did not list as a reason for the visit depression, it was put in the screening questions section, and the score is above 12 or above. And so it was marked in red to help the clinician know this is a problem. Vital signs came in here. This is just a simple example of how the program creates a SOAP note for the clinician based on what the patient has entered. I've just been playing with the idea of doing patient analysis. There is a separate program I'll show you in a few minutes, but I thought it'd be nice to help me stay focused on what is important for each patient by bringing right to the forefront what some of their common diseases might be that the patient has. The program also looks into the chart at various parameters and lets the clinician know if there are deficiencies in the problem list. I'll show you in a minute with Edwina. Then what happens is because Edward has all these tracked conditions, it tries to get information about each track condition and essentially starts another type of SOAP note. And you can see that his A1C was too high, but it's been done in time. But his or microalbumin creatinine ratio was more than 1 year ago, so it's time to do it. And he's behind on foot exam and diabetic exam, etc. These blood pressures are from the last visit. I don't have it coming in yet from what the patient entered. But you see he's up to date on these. It also tells you what medicines he's taken for that condition. Same thing for all these other problems. So you get almost immediate feedback on what the patient has and what they might be behind on. Let's say we are working with Edward on his medications. And Edward speaks Chinese. So when we have finished the visit and he's ready to leave, I want to create a medication list that he can read in his language. And so here we have an example that included both graphics and the patient's language of simplified Chinese. These graphics may take a little bit of explanation for patients to understand right away, but amlodipine is going to be taken at night. So this is morning, afternoon, evening, and nighttime. You take it by mouth. That's a little icon that suggests it's for blood pressure. This one probably needs more work, but that is as needed with a question mark. And this is around the clock, clock with little round and round arrows. If you have either imported or taken the photograph of the pill, the patient is actually taking, you can put it in here so that the patient knows exactly which pill it is if they cannot read English. Here's an example of dulaglutide and how often to take it. It still needs a little work, but you get the idea. You could not include the graphics and just include the patient's language. Another thing is all these graphics are not hard-coded into the program, so the end user can choose different graphics for each of these items, and they can easily be updated as things improve across the program. Now, let's say the patient got some labs done a little while back, and I want to create a result note for the patient to tell them how their labs are doing. Created a simple program that makes it easy to generate a letter to the patient. For example, it was my pleasure seeing you recently. Thanks for getting your labs done. Diabetes test is almost normal. Cholesterol level is good. I'm not sure Edward's taking his medicines, so let's just say, please make sure you are taking your medicines. Then I can say various things in closing. This generates the letter, and then I can send that to the patient. Now, given Edward speaks Chinese, I can come to the next tab and choose Chinese and generate a letter that includes both English and Chinese for him to understand what is going on. And the labs that I selected were automatically included in the letter that I sent to Edward. Now, I told you before about the patient chart analysis. Let's go to Edwina for a second and go to her chart and go to the snapshot. Now, I was telling you that the program analyzes the chart and tries to find diagnoses that may not be on the problem list so we can add them later. And this is what happened with Edwina. Her A1C was 11.3 with a mean of 9.4, but diabetes is not on the problem list. So it's telling me that. Also hypertension. was noted to have multiple readings above, including the mean was too high, and she is overweight. So all these things were suggested, even though they're not on the problem list. Let's go back to Edwards' chart for a second. Now, primary care is very complicated, and there are hundreds of moving parts and data points that we need to track. We have started creating an analyzed patient chart module to help us. So this is pretty similar to what you saw before on the main snapshot for the patient. This is the health maintenance, and you can select or deselect any of these items, and you can just click here and order all those tests automatically. Let us say I want to look at diabetes for this patient. I can see a summary of what's going on and see what's behind. I also have down here the medications that the patient is taking. I include hypertensive meds for diabetics, as they come together so frequently. The program can tell you if you can increase the medicine or reduce the medicine. That helps you better understand what you can change. Also, you can view the details of a medicine, such as when, if there were dates, this is just a test patient, but when they were prescribed, at what dose they were prescribed. So you can see all the medications the patient was on for this one medicine and when it was prescribed and the dosing. Also gives you a little idea of sizes that are available and maximum recommended dose, etc. It makes it very easy that way to know which way to go when you're wanting to make these changes. Another thing I can do is I can build a note from the analyzed patient chart. Let's say we want to talk about diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and hypothyroidism. I am basically building a note just by doing this, and it looks like the other section puts it in both subjective and assessment plan. So it makes the note writing process so much easier for me. Other things we can do, we can also create tables to look at over time for his diabetes, what's been happening to his A1C over time, and all the other conditions as well. Vital signs, I could, let's say, look at his blood pressure, and I can graph it out. Then what I could do is I could choose medications that he is taking for high blood pressure. And I can then annotate the graph with when I started medicines. These meds were started before patient data was selected or entered for Edwards, so we don't see it. I can show you on another screen where this looks a bit better. Same thing can be done for labs. If I wanted to do a A1C, I could graph A1C and then choose the diabetes medicines and annotate the graph for that. So it helps the clinician better understand what their response to medications is. It can also help identify patients who really are not taking their medicines. It just makes it an easier step so the clinician does not have to go back and forth between lab values and when medications were prescribed. Okay, hopefully that gives you an idea about the analyzed patient chart. In terms of medicines, one other thing is I've created a way to just make exploring medicines a little easier. This patient doesn't have a lot of meds, but it gives you a summary of how long they were on medicines, and you can do multiple medicines to create a report to help you better focus in on what's happening. Let's go to a few other things. What I use fairly regularly nowadays is when I refer a patient to a specialist, they often don't read what's called the after visit summary. So I have created this to make it much easier to contact the patient. I will put the referral in the EHR, and then I can just send a message via text to the patient's phone, and it includes a Google Maps link. And if the patient has set up Google Maps in their language, then when they click on the link, it may tell them how to get to, let's say, a specialty appointment in Arabic or Dari or whatever else. Taking this concept a little further, I did an appointment reminder generator. Same concept. Let's say I'm going to refer to a chiropractor and they have an appointment at the end of the month, and we were found out that it was at 9 a.m. I can include the patient language and also include English. When I move this over, this is for printed to give to the patient, and it includes it in the patient's language of simplified Chinese along with English and some of the details. And I can also text this to the patient so they know when the appointment is going to occur, where, etc. Health maintenance is a typical tab. You can update or change maintenance things. We're building a fairly extensive list of issues to track. And we're going to keep expanding all that. I think I showed this to you already, but we can get statistics for, let's say, the A1C, how many times has it been measured, the min, the max, the mean, and how the most recent value compares to previous values. Like shown before, you can, from the lab tab, you can annotate what's going on with medications. This one includes more data than an analyzed patient chart, so you can see when medications were prescribed. This just gives you an idea of what's going on with the health maintenance section and how you can build up what you want to do. About 9 years ago, Medicare set up something called the Chronic Care Management program. And when a clinician's office spends 20 minutes or more dealing with a specific patient per month, you can get an extra $45 or so. And given mostly that's going to be staff doing it, this program was created to help track when staff are spending time with patients. So on the left-hand side is a current contact. Let us say I was going to reach out to Edward. And I was going to call him on a cell phone. It's just for disease management. I could start a timer. And then I can put into here as I'm talking with Edward what he's saying, you know. I can pause the timer or I can stop it, which will end this contact. And I can do as many contacts as I want per day. So let's stop it and we can just see the contact report. It'll tell us 28 seconds we're dealing with Edward and the time, what was said during the visit, etc. These are just some past ones. You can see the past ones that have been from before. And what happens is at the end of the month, you can generate a report that will tell you which patients meet the criteria for billing purposes. I haven't used this in a while. So let's just say we're going to look back in time so I can show you all the contacts. And these are all contacts that happen. Then on the bottom half, I'm going to choose all patients between 20 and 60 minutes. And I can generate a report for the patients who met those criteria. So 25 minutes, 43 minutes, and 23 minutes. Medicare has required diagnoses, certain diagnoses in the past. So this includes what diagnoses the patient has that meet the criteria for Medicare. Another thing that Medicare had required in the past is you had to create care plans. I've made it very easy to build care plans for the patient. So you might go through and choose some of these things. And we could preview all. I can also choose what language to display this in. So this one included both English for the headings, as well as Spanish. And so you would go through this entire process. We can view prior care plans, so you get an idea of what's really possible. You can even put in conditions and specific parameters and then mark them off with a color so that the patient can better understand what's an issue and what is not. This has been translated into Spanish for this patient. And it included both Spanish and English. But this was making care plan very simple to create in a timely manner. You can also load up to 3 different care plans to compare over time. So you can see what has changed over time for this patient. So fairly straightforward program, but it allows you to increase revenue and track this easily. We have a to-do list. So when you're with a patient, you can add that patient for items you need to do. And either you can be in the patient and look at the to-do list, or you can do a to-do list for your whole practice. You can also sort that by time or importance, etc., or by names to help you track what needs to get done. Because I have actual patients in here, I cannot show you the to-do tracker. Same thing with high-risk patient tracker. I can add patients that I'm really worried about to the high-risk patient tracker, and I build up a list, and I can keep track of what exactly they need done or what I should be tracking over time. Another thing we have created was a population manager. This imported our patients from our schedule for the day. You can also import, let's say, a list of patients using their MRN or medical record number. This is another way to, let's say, manage your patients on warfarin or all your diabetics, etc. On the right-hand side, though, you can build what population you want to work with. So let's say I only want to look at my patients, and I want to look at all my diabetics. And I only want my diabetics with an A1C that is greater than 9, greater than or equal to 9.0. Because this will actually pull up my patients, I cannot show you this, but if I click here, over here, that list will be gone, and I'll have all my own diabetics who have an A1C of 9 or higher. Then I can work that population to better manage it. Just an example using our test patients, these are just Bayesian statistics. It's really more of a placeholder to show what could be created. Many more can be added to this in the future. List diagnoses by frequency, etc., and medications, that sort of thing. This is another version of the to-do list by each patient. So if I had a large list, it could help me work my to-dos for the patients that I'm trying to track. I realized a long time ago that my mechanic was giving me better reports than our doctor's office was. So I created a report generator. And this is just one example of Edward's a diabetic. And so I created a report that is detail oriented up here. And it's very specific for Edward. So it'll say his A1C was 7.4. Then it will say in text if I think that's great, not great, or needs work. Same thing with the LDL and other things. For those who don't want all that detail, this is just a color-coded report to help Edward focus on what might be important. We also have a preventive report card. So less text here, but same concept, which is it shows with color coding what the patient might need to work on for prevention. Group reports. Multiple things can happen in here. One of the common ones, though, is let's say I'm getting ready to see my population of patients for the afternoon. I can create a to-do list very easily. And this has various ways I can do a very simple, just text, or I can include what to do for this patient with color coding and tables. So this is for Edward and helps me with the colors, focusing on what I really need to do for Edward. And there's Edwina. But this is just one example. You can have multiple other reports going at one time. In the population management program, I can also contact patients very easily. As an example, let's say my patients are on an INR and I want them to go get their INR. What happens is the patient's first name will come into here. All I have to do is say send to cell, and the selected patients will be contacted via text, reminding them to get their INR. Just makes it very simple. And then chronic care management, I put into population manager so that in this program, you can also track how much time you spend with each patient as you manage their issues. And there are multiple things here that are going on with, as an example, Edward. So I could start my timer here and then work on all this, reach out to Edward, update all this information. And this time tracking goes into the other program I saw you. So at the end of the month, you would have all this information there. Other thing I could show you is we're just starting to do note creation. As I showed you before, we could start creating a note. We can actually create the note from the patient answers that we sent before when the patient checked in. I can also use a templated note. And then I could, let's say, put in the diabetes thing, both in the subjective assessment plan or just one area. If I include data and include details, I will get more information, such as this. This is for billing to make it much easier. As you see, when I add the diagnoses from the problem list, it comes over to billing automatically. It's easy to choose this. I also have patient instructions that can be included for the patient when they're writing their note. This is just starting out, but hopefully it gives you an idea. We can also do the usual, like I showed you before, of um, looking at, let's say, the BMI or the blood pressure and graphing it, and then looking at the meds that are associated with that condition, etc. But this is just being started. Now, a note that is even further away from completion, but very complicated in some ways, is this one. I kind of envisioned a pilot in the cockpit. During a visit, you have so many different pieces of information you have to keep track of. So again, this is the diagnoses. And if I wanted to include them into my current visit, I could just order that to come in. I can actually go to prior visits and I could move that over here from prior visits. I also have a section that when I'm building today's note, I can create an area for the next visit over here, and that comes over here. So let's say I told myself I wanted to look at hypertension and increase losartan if the blood pressure was not controlled next visit. I could actually populate today's note with problems from the prior visit. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. You can also get history this way for common problems. And put in things like, pretext. And it just makes it quicker to, sorry, I'm looking and decoding some of that, but then this goes into the diabetes and I can do depression and other things to get more history. But this is just a work in progress right now. Okay, I think I have given you an idea of some of the highlights of this program. There is so much more to this, but we can stop this now. And hopefully we gave you some ideas or some things to think about for this program.